speaking of alliances, the debate rages on whether or not the African National Congress remains a pro-poor or pro-working class party. This conversation, of course, is not without its controversies. But former minister and long-standing Labour activist Naidoo is reluctant to speak his mind on that subject. And for that, he joins us tonight to share some of his thoughts on the matters that are arising. Good evening, Jay. Good to have you with us tonight.
Bravo. Very nice to meet you, and congratulations. This is quite late for an elder like me, but I said, well, a black-owned station that has youth and women as shareholders, I'm here to support you.
We appreciate you, and as we turn 2 years, we need voices of the likes of you more and more to be heard here on the station. But let's reflect on Workers' Day, Jay. I mean, were you surprised, fell off your chair when you heard COSATU yet again expressing its commitment to supporting the ANC in the October elections? And does the ANC deserve the support of the workers?
Well, let me go back a long while, to the point when the alliance was set up, after the unbanning of the African National Congress. Now, in the 1980s, within high levels of repression, one of the only organizations that remained standing, because it was organized in thousands and thousands of shops and mines and factories across the land, in spite of the fact that they bombed our buildings and arrested our people, they could not crush the organization. We were the Achilles heel of the apartheid state, and so that paralyzed them. But towards the end of the 80s, we saw that the end was coming. It became more brutal. On the 29th of May, that's when the siege of COSATU took place, and they broke down door by door as they went up 11 floors. On the 7th of May, they bombed our whole building, so it imploded. And so, but 1987 was a year of deep discontent and the rise of the working class. The OK Bazaar strike in the beginning of the year, the railway workers strike, and then the biggest strike in the history of our country, the mine workers strike. 340,000 miners going on strike for a living wage, but more than a living wage, for political freedom. So COSATU saw that, and we said, well, it's great to sit in one tent and for all of us to be against apartheid. Apartheid will go. Even if we're not there to see it, it will go. What do we want to replace it? And from that process of debate came a proposal for a reconstruction and development program where we wanted to define what the post-apartheid country would look like. What would be the goals of development. And there we defined it, and it became the manifesto of the ANC, which won us a landslide victory in 1994. So our support, which I led as a negotiator on behalf of COSATU with the South African Communist Party and the African National Congress, was on the basis that there's a program of action which would advance workers' rights, that will address poverty, that will ensure equity in relation to the way in which wealth was shared in our country, and would address critical questions of economic apartheid, land ownership, education and training, right to access to health. It was a detailed program.
Yeah.
So our support was not given to a political party. It was given to a political program of transformation.
Right.
But 2 years into our term of office, the first democratic term, the RDP office that I was running and, that I was mandated to ensure that goals were entrenched across the government, it was shut down. So then the question is, what is COSATU supporting? What is the program today that is anti-poor, that is about transformation, that's about tackling corruption and tackling inequality that has grown in our country? And I think that's the question that I can't answer. I think you should ask the COSATU leaders. I can answer for the period where I signed the document that built the first alliance, the tripartite alliance,
but
in 1992.
How does then the ANC and the ANC president have the confidence to come and appear before COSATU and say, well, look, we are implementing a salary freeze, but we still count on you to support us and galvanize your people and get them around the organization and vote for us. I mean, what gives them that kind of confidence to say, we can talk of a salary freeze for the next 3 years because, of course, government needs to save 300 billion rands, and they'll understand, and they'll still vote for us?
Well, you know, the trade union movement, Thabo, is not a political party. And it'll never be a political party. So if, you know, people don't join a trade union movement based on, you know, joining a political party. They join a political party. But the trade union movement has in the past, has in the present, and will always have a political agenda. So then it needs to identify, in turn, in respect for its support, which if it sits with 1.5 million workers, you know, it's a huge support. It's a vote bank. What am I getting in return? The blood of a trade union is collective bargaining, negotiation. What am I getting in return? And this is the question workers should ask, not leaders, because often leaders are just looking at it as a conveyor belt into the parliament, becoming ministers or becoming people that are part of the elite. But the workers have to ask this question. And in my day, they asked those questions. You know, I mean, you could not go into a meeting with the employers without having a mandate, without giving a report back. So what is the mandate that workers are giving? Not the leaders of the workers, including the shop stewards, the workers themselves. What is their mandate? What are their demands? So I have no issue with the issue of belt tightening in a society, in an economy. But who are the ones that cause the crisis that we have, the financial crisis, the economic crisis, the state capture, the collapse of our state-owned enterprises? Is an elite within our own ranks. Who has gone to jail for that? Who has been tried for that? Who has been charged for that? What the Zondo Commission reveals is an unparalleled looting of the state. And so what is the ANC and government going to do about that? Should it not prove itself that it is committed to rooting out corruption first? And then the belt tightening. So shouldn't the people at the top lead? Shouldn't they take a salary cut as the political office bearers? Shouldn't there be a ceiling on wages of the top paid people in the public and private sectors of our country?
Yeah. Shouldn't
there be a rescindment of the bonuses, the outrageous bonuses that are paid to people in, state-owned enterprises and private sector?
What I'm hearing you say is that the use of political power has not benefited the worker. So where did we go wrong? Let's take a break. When we come back, I want us to tackle that. Former Cabinet Minister and long-standing Labour activist Naidoo with us tonight here on the Newsbeat Late Night. We'll continue in a moment. Welcome back here on the Newsfeed Late Night in conversation with former Cabinet Minister and long-standing Labour activist Naidoo, and expressing his views on Workers' Day and, of course, the Labour movement's support for a political organization. So, Jay, you're saying if we ask the question, what has the political elite done with the political power that they have received and enjoyed because of the many workers who voted for them, yet they are still living in poverty? One-third of them are still living in poverty, at least, maybe even more. Where did we go wrong? Because many are saying, well, what happened is an ANC wanted a sweetheart labor movement, and they got into this relationship together to make them weak, pretty much promised them ministerial jobs and so on and so forth, blue lights and bodyguards.
Well, I think that the issue of a political alliance is not in principle a bad idea. So I go back to the issue. What is the basis of an alliance? It must be a program of action. What should that program of action do? Well, it has to address the needs of the working class, which includes the bulk of people who are either working at very low wages, in untenable working conditions, who are the ones that face the brunt of retrenchment and belt-tightening because of the corruption of those at the top. And so we ask, who's responsible for this? Who has squandered the opportunity for us to deliver the better life that we promised our people in 1994? And we hold them to account, and we speak truth to power. So I have no, in principle, difficulty with a trade union movement pledging its support. But I always ask, because in the days that I was a leader of the labor movement, the working class didn't just represent its members. It represented society, the unemployed, the youth, the students, the parents, the people in the rural areas. Who are we representing today in trade unions? Because what I know is a lot of young workers don't want to join trade unions. They don't trust trade unions. They don't even trust government, political parties. They don't trust civil society. They don't trust anything that my generation represents today. Yeah. So I think we need to question everyone and question everything.
Yeah.
There's something fundamentally wrong with the state of our nation.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be a corporatist pact between labor and big business and government that is going to, or big civil society organizations. Our country was not freed by leaders from big organizations, including myself. It's because we were organized at the point of production. We are organized in street committees and village committees. We are organized because people stood up and said, we have had enough. We did not give our power away to our leaders. That's the crisis that we are in today, that has created a crisis of legitimacy, of credibility, of all institutions, of politics itself, of our democracy as a whole. Because half the young people today in South Africa don't even bother to register to vote in our lifetime.
Yeah.
When people, thousands of people that I know, died for this right to vote. So I think it's really important that the labor movement, not just COSATU, but all of them, need to put aside their differences and their petty squabbles and their big egos and come together and say, you can pledge whatever support to whatever political organization you want to, but what is the minimum floor of demands we should make as the working class on any political party? Because I don't see any politician out there that actually truly represents the needs or the aspiration or of the ordinary South African citizen, the 55 million people.
Yeah.
It's all about who's going to get into power and stay in power so that they can feed at the trough.
Yes.
And that's the type of politics that will create chaos in our countries, bringing us back to the precipice of the type of racial division and class division and exclusion that we had in the 1980s.
Speaking of mobilizing the collective, one of the things that the president of COSATU raised this past weekend is what you've just spoken about, a majority of those who are ununionized. In fact, she says if in a company you don't have at least over 50% unionized, you might as well forget it. You're not really doing your job. What is it that is making it difficult for them to be able to mobilize, especially in this new workspace that we are in?
Well, Thabo, that's a topic for a whole new conversation, because if you do not understand that the digital revolution, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, 3 and 4 and 5D printing has fundamentally changed the world we live in. Look at this interview that we had. The internet belongs to no one, but has been hijacked by some vested interests. So it's really great to see young people like you breaking down those controls, which in the past would have been under the control of elites, whether in the state-owned media or in the private media. So the technology itself is leveling the playing field. But it also changed everything about how we live, how we work, how we communicate, how we think about ourselves. So I think that the model of union organizing has not kept up with pace with that. Take collective bargaining. When I was a trade union organizer, when I went to a factory and there were 1,000 workers there, it was one employer. There was no outsourcing. There weren't more than one employer. Today, in any place, including Marikana, which is the bloodiest conflict in our labor history,